Welcome to Coffee with Coach. Is your church like Lassie? A warm, affectionate collie that greets you when you come in the door, lives to make you happy, and is devoted to everyone in the family? If your average worship attendance is between 35 and 100, your church may be a collie. I have 3 goals for these videos: to help you become a better pastor and leader, to save you time and money, and to help educate, energize, and motivate you to energize and motivate your church. So, the problem is, how best can we understand the nature of our church so that we can lead it appropriately? As I mentioned last week in Cats, the idea for this series comes from the 1984 book Looking in the Mirror by Lyle Schaller. Full credit here. I was stunned by the brilliance of Schaller in understanding the nature of different size systems and how churches reflect those differences. I've taken Schaller's work a bit forward, reworked it a bit, but the essential concepts are his. If you find these videos valuable, I hope you will subscribe to my channel, and if you have questions or comments, you can add them below or email me at steve@revstevep.com. My coffee mug today. I've been umpiring Little League games for about 25 years now, and they gave me this cup a few years ago to say thank you for being a volunteer umpire. Something I love doing. The only payoff is the kids have a good time and learn something about baseball. Churches with an average attendance of 35 to 100 tend to act a lot like collies. These creatures are warm and affectionate and respond well to love and attention. Whereas the cat has little interest in making their pastor happy, the collie lives to make the pastor happy. When the pastor goes away on seminars or vacation, the collie is beside itself waiting for the pastor to return, and it wants to know everything the pastor did while away, and, oh yes, please tell me you missed me. The collie represents more than 1/3 of all United Methodist churches. Whereas the cat is small and independent, the collie is larger and very dependent, but it still tends to be a single cell, one large group. It thinks like one and shifts opinions as one. There are small collies and larger collies. Smaller collies are often linked with a nearby cat. This can be beneficial from a salary standpoint for pastors, but it can be a strain when trying to allocate time and expectations. Clergy and denominational leaders want to ensure each creature receives equal attention, but doing so can be frustrating at best. Consider the wisdom of treating each according to their nature. Treat the cat like a cat. At times it can be ignored almost completely. Just remember to feed it on Sundays. Treat the collie like a friendly dog. Feed it, lavish it with attention and affection and lots of praise. Don't expect the cat to act like a collie or become friends. They tend to be natural enemies. Larger collies can usually support one pastor and a small additional part-time staff, but larger collies tend to yo-yo between 75 and 100 in attendance. When the collie church reaches 100 in average attendance, this is often because there is a second collie in the house. The collie relies on being one cell, one family, and when a second cell is detected, there will be conflict. One of 2 things is likely to happen. The larger collie drives the smaller one out of the house, or the conflict between the 2 erodes both sides until the smaller unit finds some peace. In either scenario, attendance drops to between 50 to 75. The old pastor is jettisoned, and the collie must be allowed to heal for a couple years. Both the cat and the collie have a strong resistance to growth. The cat simply doesn't care. It is too contented to grow. The nice collie, who loves his family, tends to bark at strangers who don't quite fit the family mold. One additional problem faced by cats and collies is the past experiences of the clergy who are sent to serve. When most of these churches were started, most pastors came from small rural churches, so they understood the dynamics of these animals and put up with their peculiarities. Over the past 50 years, most new pastors come from much larger urban settings with 600 to 1,000 members and a very dynamic pastor and ministry. The first churches they are asked to serve leaving seminary are in fact totally foreign to them. Many begin to question whether ministry was the right career for them to follow. All the ministry things they know how to do from their past experience are almost totally unworkable in the Cat and the Collie churches. The most effective pastor for this church is one who likes to build close relationships over long periods of time, a real people person. Pastors who accept a church this size with the expectation to move quickly to a bigger, better church will have trouble doing well. The pastor who expects to stay a few more years will benefit from the mutual affection that grows between a pastor and the collie. Such a relationship can feed both for years. An ideal pastor will be very patient as he or she teaches the collie how to do new things. The collie will respond best to sincere affection, constant praise, rare criticism, and dinner on time. Feeding the collie means giving it a weekly sermon that is filled with affection, praise, reassurance, and love. If the collie is fed with sermons that are critical, scolding, and finger-wagging, then the collie will become depressed and stop feeding, or stop attending worship. Feeding also involves instantaneous hospital calling on members, and this is easier to do because the collie will tell the pastor ahead of time when it is going to the hospital, or in sudden emergencies, the network will inform the pastor first, not last. Since most pastors move every 3 years or less, the collie will expect to be abandoned and have its heart broken every time it gets a new pastor. If the pastor doesn't leave at the end of the 3rd year, then the collie begins to hope that the pastor will stay through the 4th year and maybe beyond. The pastor has to be prepared to feed the collie for 4 years before seeing exceptional changes and new growth. Once the collie learns to love the new pastor, the pastor can ask it to learn new tricks, and it will do everything it can to please the pastor. New Bible studies, new fellowship groups, new greeters, all will be easily accomplished after the collie is fully aware of the pastor's love. The small collie can grow from 35 to 100, but if it is already 100, it will have difficulty growing beyond 100 because it will change the nature of the animal. The problem becomes when average attendance goes over 100. It is almost certain to have 2 groups, as I mentioned before. 2 groups will challenge each other. But there is another strategy. You can add a 3rd group. When you add a 3rd group, the 3 dogs can learn to run as a pack, and they will get along much better. Then you can begin to grow beyond just having 2 collies. When a collie-sized church grows beyond 100, it begins to take on the characteristics of a garden, requiring the pastor to learn new ways of leading the church to live into that paradigm. If the pastor fails to recognize the shifting reality of the growing collie, the church will likely shrink back into the size that it is most comfortable for both the pastor and the collie. When this happens, it is the pastor's leadership that has failed to grow. Yet most pastors blame the ceiling on the churches and lose heart in the collie's ability to grow. Collies like to keep their owners, and many pastors find that serving a collie is just about as good as it gets. The collie will reward a loving pastor with years of love and affection, but to grow beyond 100, the pastor must begin to lead a garden. It is not just a paradigm shift, it is a huge shift in style, in time, and in self-image. We'll talk about that next week. But think about it. Is your church a collie? I hope you found this video helpful. In the coming weeks, we will discuss the nature of ever larger congregations and how best to lead those increased sizes. Next week, the garden. So, as I said before, I hope you'll subscribe and like my channel and return in the weeks ahead to learn more about leading your church. Have a great week.